This is a meeting of the Athens Board of Zoning Appeals. The meeting is called to order at 7 p.m. this evening, July 10, 2007. The board consists of 5 members, and now I'm 2 alternates. An alternate takes full part in discussions of the board and becomes a voting member in the absence or conflict of interest of a regular member. This evening, neither of our alternates is present, however. We do have a new alternate. Her name is Michelle Draybold, who will be joining us soon. But present this evening, excuse me, are members John Golsey, Greg LaBelle, Roger Gruser, Betty Hollow, and myself, Muriel Frederick. Also present this evening, our zoning administrator is Steve Pearson, Paul Eschenbacher, our acting secretary, and Michael Miller from the City Law Director's office. The board operates according to the following procedure. The chair names and describes the case. The zoning administrator cites specifics of the refusal of the case. The appellant or representative then will state the case for granting the appeal. Testimony next is taken from those who support granting the appeal, then those who wish to speak in general comment, and then those who support denial of the appeal. And following all testimonies, the board will receive concluding remarks from the appellant. Discussion from the floor then will be closed. The board will deliberate and render a decision. Under Athens City Code, Section 230703B, the board has the power to grant such variances from the code as will not be contrary to the public interest, so that the spirit of the code shall be observed, public safety and welfare secured, and substantial justice done. Athens City Code Section 230910C requires that variances from the code shall not be granted unless the board makes specific findings of fact based directly on the evidence provided to it that each and every one of the following 6 criteria are met. Practical difficulty or undue hardship is first. There must exist a practical difficulty or undue hardship caused by exceptional conditions pertaining to the specific piece of property. Number 2 is exceptional circumstances. There must exist exceptional circumstances or conditions applying to the property or its intended use that do not in general apply to properties in the same zoning district. Number 3, preservation of equal property rights. It must be determined that literal interpretation of the code would deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same vicinity, while granting the variance would not convey a special privilege. Number 4 is minimum variance. It must be determined the variance is the minimum required to make reasonable use of the property. Number 5, absence of detriment. It must be determined that granting of the variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent properties, nor materially impair the purposes of the code or the public interest. And the last is not of a general nature. The variance sought must not be of a general or recurring nature, such that the situation would more reasonably be handled by changing the law. Any person aggrieved by the decision of the board may file an appeal to the Court of Common Pleas. Such petition must be filed within 30 days after the mailing of the board's resolution to the appellant. On the agenda this evening, we have one case. It's number 0710V for 13701 Della Drive, which will be, when it's annexed into the city, zoned R3. Beaumont Green, LLC is the appellant. The board is required by law to take testimony under oath. Anyone wishing to speak, please stand to be sworn. Do you swear that the testimony you give to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Thank you. Okay, I'm not quite sure how best to proceed. Maybe we should start by Steve just following it out in the normal way of having you state the reason for the refusal of the appellant's request for a variance, for a permit.
My name is Steve Pierce. I'm one of the zoning administrators for the City of Athens, Ohio. Included in part of the packet of information that you have, clear at the end, is a copy of City Council Ordinance 00507, passed on March 5th, 2007. And it outlines some general terms concerning a development agreement between the City of Athens and Beaumont Green LLC. It states some city responsibilities, and it states some responsibilities of the developer. Section 2F, under the developer's responsibilities, says that the developer agrees to comply with all city codes prior to annexation, and that the parties acknowledge that the developer will request a variance with respect to city's parking requirements.
Okay, and so when the request for the variance was made, the request for the building permit was made to you, you had to deny the permit because it was submitted, it was insufficient off-street parking.
That's correct.
And would they normally require a permit from you to to construct something outside of the city?
Normally, properties outside the city limits are not subject to city regulations.
Right.
But in this particular case, there is an agreement signed by the developer and Athens City Council, which, as I mentioned in Section 2F, says the developer agrees to comply with all city codes prior to annexation. And under the city's responsibilities, let me see if I can find it here. Well, actually, there isn't anything under the city's responsibilities, except that they will, I take that back. Under the city's responsibilities, it says it's the city's intention to annex the property R3, subject to the developer receiving approval of such zoning from both the Planning Commission and Council, and any construction prior to annexation shall comply with city zoning requirements. So with the application, it was noted that there was insufficient parking, and therefore the permit was denied.
Okay, so your understanding then is that you have been given jurisdiction by the City of Athens over an area where the city has no jurisdiction. Is that, you've been given direction by the City Council to exercise jurisdiction in an area where customarily you wouldn't have it.
That's my basic understanding, yes.
Okay, and that,
aren't they giving you jurisdiction by the statements that they signed regarding that they would comply with the city's rules? So they gave you permission to enforce those.
Right. Under 2F, it says the developer agrees, and this is it's called a development agreement. The developer agrees to comply with all city codes prior to annexation.
So the city isn't giving him the authority. The developer's giving him the authority.
well, a developer can't give us authority, though. See, we only get authority by this Athens City Code, and the Athens City Code stops at the Athens city limits. So, as far as I can tell, now they have to apply with all the other city codes that they can comply with, but they haven't the power to comply by doing anything more than requesting a variance. I understand that they've requested a variance today. I don't think we have the authority or the power to grant a variance today. It's my, I think we're going to need to decide by the board. My feeling is that it would be better for us to find out when the project is expected to be, when the annexation is expected to take place, and at that point have them come back to request to complete the variance. We could just I don't even know how you can.
But I don't think the city's going to extend the utilities and things until
Oh, they've
they
already
comply.
started. They've already started doing the
They
utilities.
might
That
have
was the
started,
city's.
but
That was the
still,
city's.
Are they going to extend them even if they don't comply with city codes?
They've comply as long as they comply with everything they can. Let me see. They have already. Yeah, I think they've already done pretty much of that. I don't know. We could find that out.
And what you're also saying, I think, is they could go ahead and complete it before it's annexed. So if they only have 40 parking spaces and then it's annexed,
Then they,
typically you say, well, it's done, I guess we'll have to live with it.
well, if they had more parking places than required, then they would have to undo parking places. But to add something that they didn't already have there, it seems to me, that is less of a problem. But I don't know yet until they get to make their. But I don't even know how we can be listening to this.
Should we be asking Mr. Miller?
I would really like to ask Mr. Miller, but it's really difficult for him because he's not had an opportunity to look at this until just now. But yes, I would like to ask Mr. Miller what his opinion is for the record. Up there. I would like to continue, I think.
Mike Miller from the City Law Director's Office. I was just presented this evening. An off-the-cuff opinion of mine would be that the zoning board does not have jurisdiction at this time. While they do have to comply with all city codes prior to being annexed, that doesn't necessarily, I don't think, apply to variances. Now, the question arose, what if they built the structure with only 40 parking spots if they need 48? Well, at that time, they couldn't be annexed because they're not complying with the city laws at that time. Now, an individual who is not even going to be within the annexation zone of the city of Athens can agree to, comply with the city code. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have jurisdiction to cover them. It's a minimum standard that they're going to apply to if there's not more restrictive state codes. So just because they've agreed to comply with all city code doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to have jurisdiction over them until they're within our city limits.
So they can't have a variance, and if they don't comply with all the city codes, then it's a no deal, right?
Then they can't be annexed. This is
My-
catch-22.
Right.
Well, I would say that until they actually begin construction, that you don't necessarily need the variance yet.
Well, it says they agreed to comply with all city codes, and I don't know why that wouldn't include
Parking.
parking prior to annexation.
But until the structure's actually built, the parking spaces are found to be, lacking, you're not necessarily violating the city code.
I see.
We don't see how
But
that
again, I
works.
haven't
Yeah,
done the
you haven't
research
had
yet.
time to.
But
yeah.
my off-the-cuff opinion would be that, that the zoning board of appeals doesn't have jurisdiction.
Okay, we could,
Then what works?
without any prejudice to their case at all, we could just continue this until there could be more information?
That'd be my
At
opinion.
what point would we have
Yeah.
jurisdiction, which is to say after they were annexed?
Mhm.
But this says that they have to comply before they're annexed.
Yeah,
Correct.
well, that's not their fault, and that's not Mr. Miller's fault, and that's
No,
not our
it's not our
fault.
fault. Okay.
So again, if they had built the facility and built them with insufficient parking spaces, say, and then they tried to finish the annexation, at that point, they would be outside the city code. At this point in time, they haven't built the facility, they haven't built the insufficient parking spaces, they're not outside the city code.
So they won't be annexed if they don't comply with the city code, which would be 80 parking spaces.
Unless the city changes its mind.
Or unless we gave them a variance.
No,
But
he
we
can't
don't-
get a
We can't
variance.
give them a variance because we don't
Then
have
they-
authority to
they've
give them a
agreed
variance.
to
The
comply
city,
with city
however, would
codes.
have, well, I think it's the opinion of one council member anyway, that their involvement with this whole operation ended with the development agreement regarding water and sewer.
I agree.
I don't see how this is going to work.
But I think they could, again, this is an off-the-cuff opinion that I'm requesting, and I understand that it isn't, necessarily researched, or it might change. But the city put this agreement together with the developer. It's within the city's ability to modify that section 2F, isn't it?
I guess I'm a little confused about the question.
Well, the question is, the developer has agreed to comply with all city codes prior to annexation. The parties acknowledged developer will request a variance with respect to city's parking requirements. That business about the parties acknowledged developer will request a variance with respect to city's parking requirements
Was a mistake.
is a mistake. They cannot get a variance for something that doesn't exist in the city of Athens. Is it possible for the city to retroactively strike this from the agreement?
I don't know that that's possible, but I think you can read the clause as being a double clause. The fact that they wrote that as two separate sentences can meet, I believe, can be read as having two separate requirements. That one, that they're going to comply with all the city codes prior to being annexed. And then two, at some point in time, they're going to request a variance regarding parking. That doesn't necessarily mean that the variance for parking has to come before the annexation.
I see. Okay. So if we continued this until after annexation, then they
Then it
would,
could be
and
dealt with.
they complied with everything else excepting the parking part. I mean, if they did everything else that's supposed to be done according to city codes, then after the annexation, they could come to us and request the variance for the parking.
I believe so.
Okay. Okay. Then, thank you very much.
But as Roger said, this is going to be a case after the structure is built, you know, and then...
Well, they can have the
old
rest of the structure built and just not have the parking part built.
They have to add the parking.
Do they actually have to have the construction done to be annexed, or are we simply talking about the acreage to be annexed?
I don't see anything that says that the,
It doesn't have to be.
that it has to be, no, it doesn't say that the structure has to be all finished
I think
before
this
it's
is just an
annexed.
opportunity for them to get utilities before it's annexed.
That was all it was about. It was about water and sewer.
Well, so they're trying to get 14-something acres annexed.
Yeah, and have the city provide water and sewer.
Right.
And that's all this is, this
And
agreement
then-
is really for.
And how long is that going to take? Does anyone have any idea?
I'll betcha somebody does. Won't you come on up and state your name and address for the record, please?
Hi, I'm Jeannie Kenny. I'm with the Woda Group, and I represent Beaumont Green LLC as the developer. And our address is 229 Huber Village Boulevard, Suite 100, Westerville, Ohio. And to answer your question about the annexation, the process has started. We are using a local attorney here, Rick Aremus. The process has started. But as my understanding, it is a lengthy process. There's notices that need to be sent out, approvals that need to be sent out, and so forth. Rick was not able to be, to attend tonight, but it is my understanding, our goal is to be fully annexed by the first part of next year. Our
January.
construction is due to be done by the end of this year and have certificates of occupancy by the end of this year.
So it'll be completed possibly before it's annexed?
Yes, if the development agreement, I believe, states we have 2 years for annexation after the development agreement, yes. And the whole reason behind our parking request was we've been working with Steve, because when we went to the city council with our proposal, we wanted to make sure we did follow all the city code requirements. And after talking to Steve, we did not want to be in a situation where after our building was built, our sign wasn't right size, our setbacks wasn't right,
Right.
all that. He did not want to have to face that at the end, and neither did we. So right up front, we told council our parking will not meet the requirements. We could do 2 things. One, we have wetlands on the site, which we wanted to preserve, and council wanted us to preserve those. We could remove the wetlands and put additional parking in. They chose that we not remove the wetlands, and we agreed to keep the wetlands preserved. We have a sign up there. There will be a sign up after construction. We will not mow them. We will not touch those wetlands. We did some research as we have been in development for 15-plus years. We've developed senior housing throughout Ohio and West Virginia, and we found that the 2-to-1 parking, seniors really don't have a lot of vehicles. You know, there's not 2 and 3 people in the household. It's normally just 2 people, husband and wife. Sometimes they only have 1 vehicle. From experience, we found that that many parking spots was, I won't say a waste of space, but it just took up a lot of green space where we could plant a tree, where we could put grass, we could put a picnic area, rather than putting all that asphalt and causing stormwater runoff. So just so that we could be upfront with council, I wanted to make sure that they knew that our parking we would not be able to meet those requirements. So then, after we got our development agreement signed and worked out, we went to Steve, which he was he didn't really know what to do neither. So we have been working with him. We want to make sure he has received our plans. He's requested additional information. Now, I don't know if you've completed your review or not, but, excuse me, we wanted to make sure that everything that we're building out there will comply to the best that we can. And I think, and I won't speak for Steve, because I'm not sure about his final review or anything else of our plans. I think we have tried and we've met that goal, but like I said, I can't speak for him.
You need 40 parking spaces, and there'll be 40 units, is that correct?
There'll be 40 units.
40 units
Yes.
with 40 parking
No,
spaces?
we have,
45.
right now, we're at 56 parking spots.
You have 56?
We have 56 at this time.
For 40 units?
Yes.
If my wife and I move into your facility, I can assure you we'll both have a car,
Okay.
especially that far out, and I think I'm probably speaking for the majority of people that would be accessing that facility. So
Okay.
you've got a pretty big shortage of parking spaces. It's a big assumption on your part that these people aren't going to have 2 cars.
Well, I won't say it's an assumption. I think it's just experience and the knowledge of building. This isn't our first senior housing, 3-story. We have several, and, we see the spaces. I've went out and I did the mayor here, I provided him with some information of what our current facilities hold, and how many spaces that are in it, and actually how many vehicles come on a daily
Don't
basis.
plan to have
But,
any
I
guests
can't
either, do you?
assume. What's that, I'm sorry?
You wouldn't plan to have any guest parking either, would you?
There are guest parking, yes.
Out of the 56 spaces?
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't leave 56 for the people that are living there.
Well, it leaves 56 spaces.
For
For
everybody
living and
living there
visitors,
and
yes.
their company.
And also for the people who work there, I imagine would be parking in the same 56 spaces?
We'll have
Yeah,
one
right.
manager.
Just one manager,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
You been in Westgate lately? It's on
no.
that same order. Can't park anywhere.
Well,
know.
this is an interesting conversation that I still think needs to be had at another time.
Okay, and I
because-
understand that. I mean, speaking for Steve and I after conversations, we wasn't real sure how we would do it. Just like he had said, we don't need permits because we are outside the city limits
Right.
at this time. But we wanted to make sure we complied with all those. So
Yeah.
we kind of,
Right.
we're trying to work with the city, and, we're kind of
Well, I
stuck
think
here.
You have been working very well with the city, it seems. The city sort of threw you a bit of a curveball with that requirement.
Yeah, because it does say prior to annexation.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say we have to have a variance prior to annexation.
But
It
I'd
just
say
says that
that-
we
But
would
you have to
meet.
comply with all the codes, which means you either have to have the parking.
Right, and we knew
or
that
get a
going in.
variance.
I mean, I was very
understand.
truthful and honest, going in, because that's why it took me
Yeah.
a while to get this in
Yeah.
that parking statement in our agreement, because I didn't want to hide anything. I wanted to be upfront. I knew we couldn't meet those requirements of the parking.
A hypothetical
So-
question, what if
Yes.
you didn't get the variance? Then do you have other plans for this structure? I mean,
If we don't
let's say
get the
we didn't
variance,
approve-
we
didn't
do
get the
have
variance.
something, I'm not sure if I know how to explain it, but if we don't get the annexation, we don't get the variance, we still use the city's utilities, and we pay them on a monthly basis. There is something worked out there. I mean, we did talk about that, we did discuss it. Yes.
Oh, good. I'm going to make a motion and hope for a second that we continue this variance request until such time as the annexation has been completed,
Okay,
at which point we will have the authority to hear the rest of
Okay.
it.
okay. And
And-
Steve, is that okay? I mean, I know it can't be okay with you, but I mean, so how, I know we don't have approvals or anything, so do we just move forward with you just reviewing the plans in the background, so to speak, and making sure that we comply with everything else then? So we're trying to work around this. We're not real sure how far we need to go, and I just want to make sure that I keep Steve happy at the end, and he's not,
Yeah, well,
Question.
what's the question?
When you stated that you had an agreement with the city to keep the wetlands, did you explain to the city that if you needed 80 parking spaces, you would have to use the
Yes.
wetlands? And the city said, there's no way you can do that because we want you, and you told us that you would at all costs preserve the wetlands? Or is the wetlands
Maybe.
up for grabs for parking?
we told them we couldn't meet the parking requirements. And in order to meet the parking requirements, we would have to destroy the wetlands.
And the city said, yes or no, or it's okay?
The city said they would like for us to keep the wetlands, and we agreed to that. That's what we agreed to.
So that's written in stone, that you can't use the wetlands?
I don't think it's
for
written in
parking?
stone, but
I think it's like a
I
gentleman's
said it at a
agreement.
meeting, and I don't like to go back on my word. Now, if that's something that we need to do after annexation, to go back to council and let them know that in order to meet the parking requirements, we will have to go back upon what we had said
Mm-hmm.
about the wetlands.
Yeah.
I mean, and, you know, if that's something that we need to do, then I guess that's between us and council
The
then.
facility really isn't large enough then to utilize without utilizing the wetlands, is that what you're saying?
The parking isn't, but the building
Well,
itself is.
parking's part of the building, and it's part of the package,
Yeah, that's true.
but you're saying that the package isn't big enough.
To meet your
unless-
requirements.
Unless you utilize the wetlands.
Yeah.
So you're trying to put 40 units in maybe where you ought to be putting 30?
Or 20.
Depending on the parking, the requirements are 2-to-1 parking.
Yeah.
Some of our facilities don't have 2-to-1 parking.
Well, most senior developments do not have 2-to-1 parking, I don't believe. I think you're right. I think in most cases, most people, at least in the senior developments that I've visited with my mother, when we were looking around for places, they did not have that amount of parking because most of the people, but they were in cities where there was a lot of public transportation, and they were, all the places that I looked at, and they were also within walking distance of something. And your place is in a nice area, it's very going to be very quiet, and that'll be nice, but there isn't anything there, it's just out in the middle of, at this time,
Yeah.
nowhere.
Right.
And there, people to get to and from are going to need transportation unless it's going to be provided by your facility. Now, one of the places I looked at with my mom did do that. They had a van that was available and took people around all the time. Is that and this is premature because this is the conversation we're going to have when we're actually doing the variance.
Right.
But is that something that your facility has in the plans? Is transportation?
It is not in the plans at this time,
I
but
would-
it's certainly something that we can talk about.
I would think that when you come back for the variance,
Mm-hmm.
that is going to be something that I'm going to be very interested in hearing about, because if you're going to not have parking, you're going to need to have transportation, because these people won't be able to get to and from the supermarket or the drugstore or the doctor's office or the theater or whatever that they're going to do. There isn't any way to do it.
The problem originates with trying to put 40 units in a space that is more ideally suited to 30.
Well,
That's the
that
problem.
Isn't that the problem that we
Instead of
hear
in
all
50
the
or so
time?
we do.
That
How
could
about
be-
50 or 60 of them? I mean, my
Yeah.
gosh, let's maximize our,
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that they have economic reasons for having selected the numbers that they did. But anyway, all of this is really moot, or whatever that, this is not the appropriate time, I think, for the discussion because I may not have persuaded everybody in the board to my point of view on this, but I believe that we need to continue it to the point at which we have jurisdiction because the property has been annexed. And I have made that motion. Does anybody care to second it?
Second it.
Okay. Now, vote.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
I'd like to see the law office research it before I give a decision.
Okay.
Well, we
So
don't
that's
That's
what we're
what they're
doing.
for.
We're going to
It's-
continue
We'd have
so
to
that
continue
there's
it
the
in
time
any
for that.
case. Yeah.
So we can continue it. Actually, if our law office determines that it's possible for us to hear it earlier,
Exactly.
then
That's what I want to say.
then
That's
we
what I'm
can do
saying.
that. All right.
So let's
So
just
let's-
change the motion to say we're going to continue it until a more appropriate time.
Until a more appropriate time as determined by
Yeah.
the
The law.
city law director's office.
Okay, I second that.
That's-
Okay. Okay. Now for that?
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody for that?
Yes.
Excellent. That's what we're going to do then.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Since this lady is probably won't be able to come back next time, do you want to hear her, see what she has to say?
When I gave up my evening, I would like to speak.
Yes. I would
Please
like-
do come up.
Hi, my name's Alice Curtis, and I'm the mother of Steve Curtis, who owns adjoining property down on the east end. So far, the developers have not been very cooperative. The city did give them the right-of-way to come through with the water line, sewer line, all that. They have holes that deep in our driveway that they did not come back and fix. Our garage, if you've seen the big garage, it's easy to see from the road. The whole structure under that, the cement has been cracked all around, inside the building also. The house, Steve did a lot of construction work in the basement of the house. Now it's all cracked, pictures knocked off the walls and broken, that type thing. And on top of that, we caught him using our water without asking. They had Steve's business phone, his cell phone, and his house phone. Nobody called and said, "Can we use some of your water to mix our cement?" But after Steve caught him, then they decided, well, you give us the whole bill and we'll pay it. Now, I think, as you're thinking, the city put the cart before the horse. They didn't ask us, are we going to be incorporated into the city, because we have no intention of it. We kind of like it that we're outside the city. So, what's going to happen there, I don't know, because I don't think they can come around to surrender us or anything else, but we have no intention of incorporating. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I guess there isn't anything that we can do. Would you like to come up?
Excuse me. Just so you know, when this ordinance was passed, I brought up the question or the concern about what shall comply with all city regulations prior to annexation meant. My understanding was that included obtaining building permits from the city, zoning certificates or zoning permits with the right amount of parking, going to the tree commission, because 12 or more units, the landscape plan around the parking lot has to be approved by the tree commission. There are some land development issues related to compliance with city codes also. Beaumont Green's scheduled to go Thursday night to the tree commission for a first review of their landscape plan. My intention is to bring this up tomorrow morning at staff meeting, and because I know the communications I had with the administration about what Section 2F said, And my understanding was that in order to comply prior to annexation, in this case, you would need a parking variance.
Well, in order to
Give us
comply, they need to
jurisdiction to
build,
do that.
no, in order to comply, they need to construct 80 parking places. That would be in compliance.
Right.
If they decide that they're not going to be in compliance,
Well, I guess what
there's
I'm
nothing
saying,
we can do about it.
okay, I guess what I'm saying is, the zoning board has said there's no need to comply with the zoning code
No, I didn't say that.
prior
When did we
to, prior to
say that?
annexation.
I don't think anybody
No, I
said
think
that.
this says they have to come to us, that's what it says, that they have to comply before annexation. Muriel is saying we don't have any jurisdiction over them before they are annexed. But this says they have to comply before they're annexed, so we need to figure out, how do we have jurisdiction if they're not in the city? So can you find out that for us from the powers
I
that be?
just
Yeah,
want to offer
suggestion.
something as far as their side of it.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I think they have complied so far.
Yep.
Because they submitted
They,
the permit.
that's my,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
my feeling.
Okay.
They've complied.
It was officially refused
Yes,
under all
okay,
this. And they've officially,
Come
which is,
to
they're
us.
allowed to do, request a variance.
Okay.
So they've done everything they're supposed to do so far. You're right, I don't know about the area about what you guys are allowed to do. I
Right.
don't know if you'd be allowed to give them a variance now with the proviso that it's only a good variance if they get annexed. But I think you're right that it needs to be sorted out.
Yeah, I think it
I'm
needs to be
just saying
sorted
on
out.
their side, they
Right.
have
They've complied with
Right.
everything. They've done everything they
But
were
it does
asked to
say
do.
that they have to comply with the codes,
Well, maybe.
which would suggest that they either need
Well,
to
maybe-
provide the parking or get the variance. right?
Maybe,
Well, that's
maybe
what-
applying
that's
for
what-
variance is
See,
a
the
part of
gray
the
area to me
compliance.
is,
That's what I'm
you
thinking.
guys grant a variance
When they don't,
with like a condition that obviously the variance isn't any good if the annexation doesn't go
Sure.
through, or the variance is good
right,
once they're annexed.
So the law office will deal with that.
Yeah.
well, and.
Yeah,
Mr.
once
Pearson
they,
is
once
gonna
we're
talk
told
to
that we
his
can
staff.
do
And that's
that,
what we
then we
just
could do that, yeah.
Said that we'd-
If it's possible, I'm more than willing to, but I don't see the point in us giving you a piece of paper that's not worth, what it's written on. So,
Yes.
please,
Yeah. I'm not, that's what I say, I'll bring it up to staff meeting tomorrow. I'm not sure now how to comply with review under the land development ordinance or the landscape ordinance or any other applicable city ordinances. I would point out that under general terms, section 3 of 00507, it says legal interpretation under section D, this agreement shall be construed and interpreted in accordance with the laws of the state of Ohio, so.
I don't
I
think you
guess what
have
I'll-
any
I'll make a
problem
rec-
with landscape ordinance or anything like that. That's just them telling them what the law will be when they are annexed, and they can comply with that in advance. That's not a board that's having to sit and judge whether or not something different can be done, other than what is by law. All of these other things are, complying exactly with the law as it's written, thump, 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 thump.
Well,
But
the-
here comes to the side, we want to make we want to do something different from the law. We want to vary. And that requires a board that has the authority to hear that.
I agree, Mira.
Yeah. The tree commission is a commission under the landscape ordinance that essentially does the same thing that the Board of Zoning Appeals does, except it has to do.
Unless are they asking to have
Landscaping
fewer
part of it.
trees or in a different position than normally would be required? Or is the tree commission just saying, this is what is required for your property, because this is what the law says?
They're presenting less than what's required for up to
Oh.
5 units.
I see, they're going to do
And the
a
tree
variance there,
commission
too.
has the authority to grant consolidations or variances.
Okay,
So
well,
they function just as you do, but only
I
for
see.
landscaping.
Well, that might be a problem too then.
It's
If
fun
they're
to
not
see
wanting
what they
just to,
do.
if they're not wanting
That's what
just to
it's-
comply strictly with the law as it's written, as long as I see it, it's saying comply with everything as written. And then, if you're not going to comply as written, then apply for a variance. And they can't,
Can't do that till you're annexed,
We think.
we think.
we think, but we'll
And
find
they're-
out.
Find out.
Legal officers will tell.
Yeah, we'll find out, so, in any case. All right, did-
Ms. Kinney and I had the discussion about what did the term comply with all city codes prior to annexation meant.
That sounds pretty clear.
And that's why we had correspondence back and forth about our understanding and the administration's understanding of what council meant by that. So I guess I'll have to go back to the administration and revisit the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Look, we have another.
Thank you. I do believe that you did have something else you wanted to say.
Yes.
Please do. And state your name and address for the record also, please.
My name is Glenn Schultz, and I also work for Woda Development, the Woda Group, representing Beaumont Green LLC, and our address is 229 Huber Village Boulevard in Westerville, Ohio. The only thing I wanted to say was, in the spirit of the agreement, when we first approached council and the city for this development to get the water and sewer, they claimed that to have these services, we needed to be annexed. The biggest concern was that if we did this without this development agreement and without cooperating with the city, that after they have already provided the sewer and water, when annexation time comes, virtually the city's rules stating that anyone having water and sewer shall be annexed within a 2-year period. There's no wavering on it. You shall be annexed.
Okay, so you'll be annexed by 2009.
Correct. Okay, the problem has been with past developments that the city has went into agreement with without this type of agreement and without us coming to such boards and coming to Steve, that shall be annexed means that the city is going to take them no matter what they have done. So now they've ended up with needing to take developments that don't have proper lighting, don't have proper parking, don't have proper anything, don't have proper trees, don't have proper size roadways, don't have proper size sewers, don't have proper size water, and the city has been stuck with that type of development.
So that's why this
So
agreement.
to prevent this from happening, and in good faith on our part, working with the city, that is how this development agreement
see.
has come about.
Sounds
The understanding that, in the very early on meetings for this, the understanding that we had was that the city actually did not have jurisdiction over this property. That is a correct statement. But if we would go through the process just as if we were inside the city, we would have everything in place that we could possibly have in place so that when the city does annex this, which it shall be because we have the water and sewer, that you have something that is in compliance with what the city wants. The thing was that these variances, this variance in particular, was brought up, as Ms. Kenny said, in the very early stages because we knew when we went in there that the parking was going to be a problem. It was that all these permits, all these plan reviews would be approved or disapproved, and then pending annexation. In other words, they would be approved, but they would not be enforceable until the annexation came about. That is why we've submitted all our fees, it's why we've paid all our tap fees, it's why we've paid our zoning fees, it's why we've paid all those things to the city, even though we're not in the city. We have made all the applications that the city required, and it is all pending annexation. And that is why Steve has reviewed the plans, that is why we're going to the tree commission, because we are trying to stay within the spirit of the agreement that was originally signed with the council. So I just wanted to say that that is how this has come about, and that is how we have arrived at this point, and it is why that we are participating as if we are already annexed. And that is what brought us here
Well,
tonight.
that's what city council has directed you to do, and
Correct,
I
and
can
that
see
is
that.
that's how we have
And
proceeded.
we'll get our direction, and then we'll see how we proceed, but we need some direction also.
All right.
This is a learning process for me.
Yeah,
He's saying that anytime you get water and sewer, you can do anything you want. In 2 years, you're in the city.
yep.
That's kind of crazy,
That
isn't
is
it?
fact.
Also, they have an
know
agreement
that.
to try to prevent that, doing anything you want to.
What would they do then about our property? If they say that you definitely will be incorporated and we're not?
I just know that our property for water and sewer, I just know that our property shall be annexed. That's what the law says. The law says you shall be annexed within 2 years.
And the city
And they
is.
won't
the city
annex an
figures
island.
their-
She's not hooked up.
City figures they've
Well,
ended their development
before you
agreement.
go,
Everything,
we cannot tell
their
you what to do
involvement
about
ended.
your neighbors, but it is, I'm sure, disturbing to all of us to hear that some of the construction has been going on to the detriment of your neighbors. So I certainly hope that you
Yeah.
all plan to be on better terms with Ms. Curtis and her son,
Yeah.
and that they are recompensed appropriately for the damages that have been
You-
caused.
I can't control the construction crew, but I can certainly report back to the higher-ups, and I'm going to your driveway as soon as we leave here.
Okay, well, one of your construction people came down and told Steve, oh, we can put a little bit of cement in them cracks and it'll be okay. No.
We'll look at that.
We
I
know
know,
that
I know that this problem has been brought up to my attention. We did have a structural engineer down on site.
Yeah,
did
he
the
said it
work.
would just be patched a
The
little bit.
structural engineer said that? We'll
Yes.
see. I have
And
not
just,
seen the
you both are aware that part of, when you do get your variance, part of the variance the findings have to be that you won't be, it's not going to be a detriment to the neighbors. So it would be real good when you do come to the point of requesting your variance or continuing your variance, that a detriment to the neighbors isn't, determined.
Like I said, I wasn't aware of everything that you had said, and I do apologize on behalf of the Lower Grove, because
Yeah.
that's certainly not how I would want to see it. So I plan on, we'll get to the bottom of it. I'll get to the bottom of it.
Good, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you very much.
thank you very much, okay. All right, there is also on the agenda this evening would be the approval of last month's minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity
Yes,
to
I
read
wish we
them?
approve them as presented.
Okay, does everyone agree to approve last month's minutes?
Yep.
Then the minutes are approved, and so I sort of sidewise announced, what I learned today, that we have another member of the board. Michelle Draybold is our new alternate.
Right. My understanding is that Michelle Draybold, who lives on North Congress Street, is the second alternate. I've yet to receive a copy of her oath of office, but she was nominated by the mayor and confirmed by city council.
Wonderful. That's very, very good news.
And I'd also like to remind you that after the next meeting in August, it's scheduled to have the workshop that
Our
you
workshop.
requested. And the only person that I know of right now who can't attend is Mr. Lavelle.
Oh,
It's the 14th?
oh, shame, shame.
Second Tuesday.
Well, it would be whatever the second Tuesday in August would be.
14th is what's on the correspondence.
Okay,
I'll limit the number of cases for that night.
I'll take
I
good
know there'll
notes.
probably be at least one, possibly one.
Okay.
But I'll make sure there's no more than two.
does Michelle know about is she going to be here for that? It would be wonderful if she could attend. Are you?
I'm not really sure. She sent me an email a while back about what days and what meetings she could and couldn't attend things. I'll have to check back through that.
Tell her about that one. I think that'll be wonderfully helpful to her if she could be at that meeting. So, okay, well, if there isn't anything else, then we're adjourned.